Right now at Gap Factory and Banana Republic Factory, save 50 to 70% off everything in stores and online. That's right, 50 to 70% off everything. Celebrate the 4th with dresses from $19.99 at Banana Republic Factory. And at Gap Factory stores, tees start at $4.99. Plus, save an extra 40% off clearance. Sale ends Tuesday. Search our store locator for your nearest Gap Factory and Banana Republic Factory store or shop us online.
So, I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and you're listening to No BS Hiring Advice. You know, millennials are the new target population. They are the folks that are to blame for everything wrong with the world. And my guest today is Lee Caraher, who's the CEO of there we go. My voice disappeared for a second. It's CEO and acclaimed communication strategist for Double Forte, a new kind of communications firm designed to work with good people, doing good work for good companies, doing great things in their categories. Lee, welcome to No BS Hiring Advice. Great to have you today.
Jeff, I am super excited to be with you today. Thank you for having me.
Super. So, millennials, what's the matter with these kids today? Why can't they be like we were, perfect in every way?
I could break out into song if you wanted me to.
What's the matter with
However,
kids today,
yes, I know that song very well. You know, there is nothing wrong with millennials today. They've become this largest generation. 80 million people have become the scapegoat for everything that we as boomers and Gen Xers are unhappy with our careers and the economy. And it's just been very convenient to blame the youngest generation, as if people haven't been blaming the youngest generation for the entirety of the human race. You know, it's not new. This is not new at all.
I'm a boomer, quite obviously, and growing up and growing up and entering the workforce, I do remember all the nonsense that was heaved at us. What's wrong with these hippies? What's wrong? They'll never amount to anything. They're useless and they're miserable. Oh
my gosh.
It's the same thing all over again, but with an extra twist, because, of course, we now have the participation awards criticism that gets heaped at them.
Which I actually agree with, but I do agree, and that's not their fault, right? It's not like millennials grew up saying, give me another award for participation out of nowhere. Their parents showed up at grade 2, grade 3, grade 4, grade 5, grade 6 saying, you did a great job. Here's a brush. Welcome. Thank you for participating. It's such crap.
It was more about the parent than anything.
It is all about the parent, and to have, everybody wins soccer, not end at second grade and expect it not to have an impact in high school, in college, and in the workforce is just ridiculous. How do I really feel?
That's okay. I feel the same way. Yeah. and I've got a son who's 15, and my wife and I took him to different things, and it wasn't my doing. I kept going to these things going, what planet are these people on? This is so bizarre.
Exactly.
Everyone walks through the door, they bat zero, and yay, you get a big medal. Oh, God.
That's great when you're 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old. But, when you're 15, not so much. I have a 15-year-old and an 18-year-old. And, the stuff they come home with is still like, and my 18-year-old totally gets it, right? He's like, Mom, this is ridiculous. I'm throwing this away. My 15-year-old, he has special needs. And so it's a bit of a different situation. But the stuff that his typical friends just bring home from sports, from music, from politics, school politics, from school, it is not the real world. And that really is what has happened to these millennials. They show up in the workplace not prepared to actually have to deal with real
right. And that's really, And that's really what we're going to get into now is how do you help a millennial win at work? How do you hire millennials? How do you attract and, more importantly, retain them since there's such a huge issue with retention of millennials? So let's try to shift into that staff retention thing before we get into the hiring, because I think that's part of the reason they get criticized. And like with the boomers and parenting, it shows up in bad parenting in the workforce. So just to give you credit here,
absolutely,
Millennials and Management is the book title. And that's what we're going into now. How do you manage a millennial? So first of all, what do millennials look for in a job? What matters to them? And I'm going to speak to the boomers now. Boomers, I know all you really care about is putting a body in the seat to do the job. I got it. But that's not what they care about any more than what you really care about when you're looking for a job. So what is a millennial looking for in an employer and in a job?
Well, I think the first thing millennials are not looking for is a lifetime job. They are not looking for that job that they're going to stay in for more than 3 years. 3 years max, probably. And when I talk about millennials now, I'm talking about in the workforce, 22 to 36-year-olds are millennials. Actually, 15 to 20 to 36-year-olds are millennials. So basically, if you're hiring one for your work, you're probably hiring at least, they are not looking for a job that they're going to stay in for the rest of their lives. And that's our first disappointment, is that we hire young people and they stay much less time than we expected them to stay. And the reason that is, is because they have seen their parents lose their jobs, lose their pensions, not be able to count on the jobs that their parents, the boomers, I'm a boomer, thought they were going to be in for a long time through, in the last 12 years, 2 or 3, depending on where you live in the country, downturns. And they've listened to them. Their parents have told them, do not count on a company. So, of course, these young people show up and they really don't expect to be there for 3 years, more than 3 years. If you're in San Francisco, you expect to be there maybe 18 months. So the first expectation is we need to understand that they don't expect it to be a long time.
And I'm going to pause you here because, and again, speaking to the the hiring manager audience here for a second, the reality is you're not going to keep them for more than 3 years. So there's no real disconnect except they're not lying to you. They're not sitting there.
Exactly.
They're not sitting there going, "Oh, I want to be here for the next 40 years of my life. I want to learn. I want to work hard. I want to get ahead." Like we were all trained to do when we were growing up. That was the speech.
Right. And we were, and that was a speech because boomers, obviously another very large population, 79 million boomers, 80 million millennials. Pretty a barbell, pretty similar, just a million more people, right? And given the dynamics of that time when we were coming into the workforce 30-something years ago, we were the wait my turn generation. There were so many of us. There were so many of the people ahead of us who were still working that we had to wait our turn. If we just waited our turn out and we did a good job, we would move up. This is not true for this group because there are still, if you divide the millennials into 3 groups, the first group is 28 to 36-year-olds or 29 to 36-year-olds. These people came into the workforce after 9/11. They know very much more about security and privacy, and they don't expect the things that we expected as boomers or Gen Xers because they didn't have an adulthood being able to go to the gate to pick up people at the airport, right? Then the next group is 21 to 28, 29-year-olds, somewhere in there. And this group came into the workforce after 2008. And after 2008, millions of millennials graduated from college and could not find work, right? Millions of boomers couldn't find work. And there are still millennials looking for work that is commensurate with their education in that age bracket. And then the last group, 15, 16 to 22, they're still in school. So, and they're learning totally differently than the oldest group. So you really have to segment your millennials first, right? The definition of success for a millennial is very different from the definition for success for a boomer, when we were young, or Gen Xer when they were coming into the workforce. And then also, it's very different for our definition of success today as we are over 50, and what Gen Xers think of as success.
So what is that definition of success?
So we really have to calibrate. Yep. So their definition of success in general, so, and I speak in great generality here, right? But is a life well lived, a life that is full. So is full of the things that are meaningful to them. They want work that matters. Every day I hear people on the street saying, I would rather poke my eye out than work for that jerk. I would rather live at home than have to sell my soul to this company who has no values, right? Every day. I mean, every day I walk down the street to go get my lunch and I hear this. And if you went on to any, you'll see this all the time, right? And kids get blamed for it. But they are very interested in having a work very aligned with their own values. They are very interested in being among teams. I think millennials get a bad rap as being a me generation, when in fact, my experience is the fastest way to put a millennial in the corner in the fetal position is to say you let the team down, is not to say you didn't live up to your potential, which is what we grew up with, right? And they want to make a difference. They want to make a difference day one. They are not really interested in waiting their turn like we were used to. And that really is a byproduct of the technology that they are digitally native, that they grew up with. This generation is used to being one click away from everybody in the world, from every piece of information they think they want in the world, from being able to tweet from the tarmac and have an airplane change its direction. They're used to having the power of the one-to-one. And hierarchy is antithetical to the millennial generation. Not only
that, one of the things that's happened to them, as it happened to the early boomers entering the workforce, is not just simply this notion of team and letting the team down, but I think they've also experienced a certain exclusion from the older generation that didn't really exist for so many others. Should have moved that phone out. My apologies. So the impact of this winds up being that they're not able to sit at the table with the grown-ups. They're still at the children's table. And the result winds up being, by being excluded, they basically go, okay, screw it. You don't want me to play? Okay, that's fine. I'll take my toys elsewhere. That's right.
I'll go somewhere else. Yeah, exactly. And I think that I wrote this book that you showed out of my experience having failed dramatically, right? When I started my company, I only hired in 2002. I only hired people with 10 years of experience for a long set of reasons, which I won't bore you with. And then in 2009, when we changed our model to be able to hire young people, then I didn't really think anything of it, because in my previous job, I had 600 to 700 people who were mostly under 30 in my group. And I hired my first set of millennials, and it was a bit of a shock. One person brought their dog into work, and then the next person brought their dog into work without asking. And one person left at 3 their second day. I was like, what just happened? And it wasn't because they were ignorant in the bad sense of the word. It was because they were not informed. They didn't know that they were supposed to ask, because they in their whole lives had never had to ask for these kinds of things. And then I hired 6 millennials in all different ages in that age range, within about 2 months of each other, and they all failed within 3 months. And they failed, when I mean by failed, they walked out the door, or we walked them out the door, or we helped them out the door, right? And I had never had 100% failure in recruiting in my entire career. I've been known for being a great recruiter, being able to suss out who, everyone makes a mistake every now and then, but 90% of the people I hired were good hires. And 6 people, one person could be their fault, but 6 people could not be all those 6 people's fault. It had to be us. We had to look at ourselves and go, what the hell just happened? So we looked at it, and then I started talking, and I went online, of course. That's the first thing you do. You start researching. And everything was so negative, Jeff. It was, millennials are entitled. Millennials want blah, blah, blah. Millennials this. And I felt that. That's why they didn't, but a whole generation can't be negative. I mean, it's just statistically impossible, you know? So I decided that I was going to be positive about it. And we went back. I started interviewing millennials just for I wasn't going to write a book, just for my own company, just to figure it out ourselves. And really lined up with, you know, they're not looking for anything else that we don't want, right? They just talk about it, right? It's not like boomers and Xers don't want meaningful work. We don't want to make a difference in the world. We don't want to be included at the table. We don't want our opinion to count. The difference is that this generation has not ever been told they don't have a place at the table and that their opinion doesn't count, right? When you get a trophy for everything, your opinion counts for everything. And they show up into the workforce and they expect the same dynamic, and that dynamic doesn't exist. So we haven't done a great job of preparing them. So what we did was to say, okay, let's turn it backwards, right? Let's flip it upside down. We're going to be really explicit about what we're about here. We're going to put it on the wall, and it's literally on the wall.
Give me an example of what's on the wall that communicates to them what's expected of them.
Yeah. So on the wall is our words that we say all the time. So things like treat your colleagues as well as we treat our clients. Things like use your force for good. Things like we have great expectations and great accommodations. Focus is your friend. Deadlines only exist if you give it time. You know, things that are part of our lexicon that you could actually just look at that wall and go, oh, I see what they're all about. Like we have clients come in and go, I get who you are. I'd like to, that's like the thing that we want everybody who's trying to hire us. We want them to come in the office and see that wall because they know what we're about. So they see what we're about, and we can talk about like how we choose clients and what you do when you have a bad client, or what you do, how we help people correct themselves and all that kind of stuff. I just had lunch with, have lunch with everybody in my company probably twice. I sort of go through once a week I have lunch with, or twice a week I have lunch or dinner with somebody in the staff, and I have like 35 people. So, probably everyone eats with me by themselves once or twice a year. And I had a lunch with my latest hire, who went from an intern to the entry level position, and he was telling me how different it is to be an employee versus an intern, because all of a sudden all these safe guardrails came off, and he sort of sat up and he was like, "You really do expect great things from us." I'm like, "Yeah, I really do." But I also, I'm having lunch with you to find out what's going on, to see, to make sure that I'm in tune with what you're thinking. Not that we can accommodate all your thoughts, but so that, you can have the thoughts and we can give you feedback all the way through the system, so that you know where you stand and you know how you can get ahead. And you can say, and what is your definition of getting ahead? Because my definition of getting ahead and your definition of getting ahead, particularly for this generation, may be vastly different.
So for the 35,000 person firm versus the 35 person firm, obviously there are hiring managers at a lower level. So it sounds like one of the ideas that people can employ is the notion of regular get-togethers with staff, where there's an actual open and honest exchange of communication, no matter what. No matter what. I call it optimistic one-on-ones. Optimism is really important, right, for this group. Super important. And but just because you're optimistic doesn't mean you're not realistic, right? And being open, having these be a regular thing and not be a big deal. I'm meeting with the CEO or the hiring manager or that person up the chain from me or whatever. That relationship is super important. And if you think about it from a hiring manager's perspective, right, this young person's not going to stay with you, but they may come back to you, and you would like them to come back to you. You hired them once. If they leave and they do well in their whatever they're going to do, bringing them back, having a boomerang is awesome, right? And how you treat them on the way out and through that whole process is
what's going to have you help them come back to you when
it's
they're
interesting.
ready.
Obviously, the boomer manager may wind up leaving as well, and they're a potential hire for you with the
Yes.
new organization. And if you're still at the old one, obviously
Absolutely.
they can boomerang to you. But it was interesting that you spoke about the notion of how you treat them during the exit, whether you're treating them as
Absolutely.
"you betrayed me" versus
Right. Yeah. You're dead to me.
which a lot of managers do.
Yeah. Not a good
lot of
thing.
managers do.
Which is the 100% wrong thing to do. Unless, I would say to you, unless that person has stolen, been fraudulent, lied, or hurt somebody, there's no reason not to have someone come back to you. Unless those people are deceitful and have hurt somebody, there's no reason to have someone, you want a company, you have a company not to like for a moment, you have a company for a long time. You can't see that, but long time, right? And if you're thinking the long term, and as I said, as the short moment time, like this person has been here for 3 years, it's time for them to go from their own career perspective. I'm going to go do something else. And I like this company. This company's been good to me. I learned a lot here, but now it's time for me to leave because I've been told my whole life, don't stay anywhere over 3 years or 4 years. You'll look stale on your resume. And that is what people find today. Boomers today who are looking for work, and there are lots of them. There are millions of people looking for work today who are our age, Jeff, right? And if you look at the resume in the last 6 years was at the same place, at the same title, you will look stale and you won't get hired. It is very challenging for a boomer who's been at one job with the same title for a long time to get hired today. And the millennials are listening to their boomer parents tell them, don't get stale. So, but being on the way out as people leave, what did you learn here? What could we have done better? We're so excited with your progress here. You really learned a lot. We're so proud that you achieved so much during your tenure here. And, when you are ready to come back, please give me a call. What's wrong with that? Doesn't mean you have to hire them. It means that person's leaving, taking their box out their door going, awesome, I rocked it. They love me. I love them. I'm going to be predisposed to either recommending the company, to coming back to the company, to when my friend calls me to say, should I take this job from this company? I'm going to say, yes, take that job. And that's what really your job is as a hiring manager, not just to hire right this second, but to hire for the long term.
I'll give the boomer, or actually the Gen X manager, a perspective here. That millennial could be the individual who's looking to bring you on as a consultant at a time later on.
Absolutely.
You want to go out with
doubt.
good graces, because even 10 years from now, when that person's in a manager's title or director's title and is in the role where they're selecting resources, you don't want to piss them off, do you?
No. Well, you never know where people are going to range up, and there are so many, more millennial or younger people owning their own companies because they just want to, it's not easy to own your own company, as you and I know, right? But, forging your own path is very attractive to many of these people in this generation. And they're also not, the wide open people are wide open people in all generations. Doesn't really make a difference. You want the best talent. And so if someone was lining up with your and when you're hiring as you're in your own company, right, as you said, like finding consultants, you want people who are lining up dramatically and not just sort of with your values, so that you can go do what you need to do and you have people do what they need to do, and that they're going to represent you.
Lee, you had a great section in your book about purposeful work and making sure the employee understands corporate mission and how what they do relates to the mission of the firm. Want to speak to that? Because I thought that was so obvious and and yet at the same time, it's not anything that firms do these days. And I think this is a strategy for all employees, not just simply millennials.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I am Captain Obvious, though, Jeff, just so you know. No original thought, just putting them together in different ways. So I think that what you hear a lot from millennials is, I don't want to do this grunt work. Why do I have to? I'm smart. I've done this once. I mastered. I want to move forward. And the people around them are like, you just because you did it once does not mean you're a master of that, right? And what's really important is to have people understand how they fit. What is their role? Who is counting on them? And then what part of the team are they on? And then from that team, how does that team contribute to the company's mission? And how does the company's mission advance the company's vision, right? So a company's vision could be, Microsoft is famous for this, right? The company's vision, a computer on every desktop. That was a vision. They weren't physically gonna, they had software, they didn't have any hardware at the time, right? But that was their vision. So what was their mission? To make software as prolific and easy, and in all parts of the scope of work that you could do in as many places as possible. And so everybody at I think Microsoft did a great job of that, early on, right? Which was everybody in the company knew if you were on the Word team or the Excel team or the PowerPoint, whatever team you were on, you knew that was part of the suite. And if you could that would be your Trojan horse. And I think purposeful companies who can convey here's how the world's going to be different because this company exists. And then you can say, okay, and our part in this is this mission. And if I don't do my job, then Joe can't do his job. If Joe doesn't do his job, then our team fails. If our team fails, then the product doesn't get to market. If the product doesn't get to, really understanding that through line from the bottom person to the top, and I really don't like those terms, but there's a reason we have people empty the trash, right? Because if the trash doesn't get emptied, people, it's disarray. If there's disarray, people leave. If the people leave, you don't get anything done. I mean, really, it's that simple. And no one hires for a job that doesn't have to get done. No one hires for a job that doesn't have to get done. So you, as an entry-level person, you may be frustrated with the fact that I did this before. I'm making a list again, or I'm filing, or whatever. Understanding and for the person around you, the hiring manager or your mentor in the group or your buddy, some companies have buddies, being able to be explicit about why this job is important and how it contributes to the overall is super important, not just for millennials, but for everybody, right? Who doesn't want to know that they actually exist for a reason? Everybody wants to have a purpose. And when you can find that purpose in a job or a team place or a role or a project, then you can keep moving on.
I did a fun exercise this weekend in preparation for this interview, and I pulled out a couple of corporate mission statements. And the first one I read, I thought was a decent one. Give people the power to share and make the world more open and connected. And I think any employee could get behind that idea.
Absolutely.
And then the next one was, and this was legitimately stated as a mission statement, a leading global financial services firm providing investment banking, securities, and investment management services to a substantial and diversified client base that includes corporations, financial institutions, governments, and high net worth individuals.
Who is that person? Because they need my help. I could sell some services to that company. Yeah, that's not.
It was bizarre.
I would never employ the company. No, that doesn't really help me. So really, what they do is they help people achieve their goals. The end. Through money management.
That's the mission of the firm. We want to help a lot of people and ourselves make a lot of money. Now, here was a quirky one. Okay. Yeah. I thought the focus was wrong, but it sounds nice if you don't pay close attention. A global and innovative network of people who use their knowledge in the field of electrical engineering and electronics and electrical engineering to benefit customers throughout the world, who learn continually, who work together closely, and I could go on. But ultimately we hire a bunch of people to help our customers.
That is a mission by committee, which is always a disaster. I think in all things working, you want to have high participation, low democracy, right? High participation, low democracy. And that sounds like a democratic mission process that went way sideways.
Agreed. Here's the last one I pulled. And I thought this was a fun one. Day after day, we are committed to sourcing the very best ingredients we can find and preparing them by hand to vegetables grown in healthy soil and pork from pigs allowed to freely root and roam outdoors or in deeply bedded barns. We are committed because we understand the connection between how food is raised and prepared and how it tastes. And we do it for farmers, animals, the environment, dentists, crane operators, ribbon dancers, magicians, cartographers, and you.
That sounds like it was like right up the street for me. So. That probably, what that, for the people in the organic and good food, local food movement, that speaks volumes. If you're not in that group, that hooks them right in. And if you're not in that group, that might not hook you in. But if you're inside baseball, as we say, you're hitting home runs.
That's how I looked at it. So I saw the first and the last one. The first one was the home run. The last one was the B, and the other two in the middle.
Yeah. No, not even. Somebody's going to make some money off those people helping them find a mission that matters,
And thus, what I get clearly is in the hiring process for millennials and others, if your firm has a quality mission statement and is known for acting from that mission, which if it isn't, this is where the work has to be institutional.
That's a problem.
Right? So if you're a financial services firm that basically has a mission statement like the one that I read there that translates into we want to make a lot of money for ourselves and our customers,
however we can, right? That doesn't mean that's all I heard there was we'll do anything to make a buck, right? And some people will be attracted to that, and other people, and increasingly more people will not. So it's sort of where green investing and has come from, right? And socially responsible investing has come from is a reaction to anything for a buck. As people understand that their actions matter, and we're all here for. I believe my personal belief is we're on this little planet in this huge universe. We're not alone, and how can we, when we leave this planet, how can we make sure that my time here mattered and made a difference? And I think more and more millennials by percentage and therefore by raw number feel that way than any other generation. And I think boomers had the same kind of thing, right? The hippies, all that kind of stuff. It was all the same. There's a lot of affinity between boomers and millennials in terms of belief systems. The difference is that most boomers in this country, so 52 to 68, 69-year-olds, are still working and will work much longer than we thought we were going to work. We all thought we were going to retire at 55. 99% of us will not until we're 68 to 72. So we're disappointed. We are disappointed. And by, when you're disappointed, you have a different point of view of the people who are behind you, Gen Xers, I think are, so Gen Xers is the smallest generation, 45 million Gen Xers in this country. And they are between 36 and 37 this year to 51, right? And they've been in the late 90s. This was right when the Gen Xers were coming into the workplace. And that's the last time you heard about the me generation, right? The entitled generation, because there weren't that many of them and the economy was booming. So if you had a pulse, you got a job. But the Gen Xers have been just screwed, pardon my term, by the 99-2000 NASDAQ crash, then the 2008-2009 economic downturn of the whole world, because this was when they were coming into the workplace and when they turned 30. And if you think about the arc of their careers as adults and those two big economic impacts to our economy, it is very challenging for them. And while the numbers would say there are not that many Gen Xers, they should all be able to find work. They should all be, getting into the prime of their careers. The theory is good, but in practice, it's very far from the truth because of what has happened in the economy and the fact that more boomers are staying in work much, much longer as a tidal wave of millennials enter the workforce for cheap labor.
I'll say that very simply that the boomers were conditioned at an early age. And once they went to school, the conditioning started off as shut up, do what you're told, regurgitate a bunch of stuff, or else you won't get into a good school. And once they got into the good school, they were told, shut up, do what you're told, regurgitate a bunch of stuff, or else you won't get a good job. And once they got the good job, they got conditioned to be fearful that they might get fired. That became the threat hanging over them. The millennials at the other end weren't really conditioned in that way. They were conditioned that they were magnificent. Not a bad thing. That they were the hope.
Absolutely.
Not a bad thing. Of the future.
Not a bad thing at all. Well, it's not their fault,
up against boomers who also got that little bit of a hippie bent in them and are kind of make amends for their mistakes. So at the same time, they want them to assimilate just like they did. And the millennials aren't ready.
Right.
Lee, there's so much more we could talk about. What haven't I asked you about that we really should cover today?
Oh, my goodness. I think what you haven't asked me about is appreciation. And part of the retention thing is about appreciation in the workplace, which is scientifically proven. Teams who feel appreciated outperform those who don't by a factor of 3 to 1, which you can measure to the bottom line. And so just saying thank you and please in your day, which, I was never conditioned this way. My father is a cardiac surgeon, retired cardiac surgeon. Please and thank you were implied, which he told us all the time. And when I started researching for just making it happen in my company, I came across this appreciation research, comes out of Harvard, Columbia, Stanford, the London School of Economics, and other places. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to try this please and thank you thing. And I actually look like a nice person. Like I would always say please and thank you. But it was very challenging for me. And I felt like such a tool. But I have to say, after the first week, I thought they were like, oh, they're going to look at me. They're going to think, what the hell just happened to Lee? She's saying please and thank you. Did you get hit in the head? But by the end of the first month, everyone was saying please and thank you all the time. And we track our time. It's a PR digital marketing firm, like you said. So we track our time, 15 minutes increments. And I can tell you that after about 6 months, we were tracking much less non-billable time than before. So non-billable time that I cannot charge to a client, went down when people were feeling better, when people thought they were being appreciated. And we found other ways to do appreciation in the company. But just saying thank you can make a huge difference for how people feel about how, their place in your company. And I have all that research in the book. And if there was one takeaway on that, I would say, just say thank you. And you'll just have a better workplace. You will just have a better workplace. No matter if you think the thank you is the paycheck, which is what I was thinking before.
Amen, sister. The book is Millennials and Management, the essential guide to making it work at work. Got to get it on camera. Lee, thank you. How can people find out more about you and the work that you do, where they can get their copy of the book and such?
Sure. The best place to go is my website, www.leecaraher.com, LeeCaraher.com. And you can also follow me on Twitter at Lee Caraher.
Lee, thank you. And folks, I'll be back next time with more advice to help you be more effective with your hiring and with staff retention. I'm Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter. I hope you enjoyed today's show. And if you can use some help, reach out to me through my website, thebiggamehunter.us, or email me at jeffaltman@thebiggamehunter.us. Hope you have a great day. Take care.
Right now at Gap Factory and Banana Republic Factory, save 50 to 70% off everything in stores and online. That's right, 50 to 70% off everything. Celebrate the 4th with dresses from $19.99 at Banana Republic Factory. And at Gap Factory stores, tees start at $4.99. Plus, save an extra 40% off clearance. Sale ends Tuesday. Search our store locator for your nearest Gap Factory and Banana Republic Factory store or shop us online. Right now at Gap Factory and Banana Republic Factory, save 50 to 70% off everything in stores and online. That's right, 50 to 70% off everything. Celebrate the 4th with dresses from $19.99 at Banana Republic Factory. And at Gap Factory stores, tees start at $4.99. Plus, save an extra 40% off clearance. Sale ends Tuesday. Search our store locator for your nearest Gap Factory and Banana Republic Factory store or shop us online.